Collaborative and Rozier Retreats. My platforms are dedicated to expanding the pool of exceptional leaders. I'm honored to be your leadership expert today. I believe that every person has the potential to become an extraordinary leader, and in doing so, significantly impact the lives of others. Extraordinary leadership begins with mindset. Relevant leaders are committed to developing the qualities necessary to successfully lead others, qualities that are cultivated and refined over time. Throughout the Irrelevant Leader podcast series, some of the world's most relevant leaders and I examine the behaviors and characteristics of irrelevant leaders. Tune in as we dig deep into identifying what goes wrong when a leader moves down the path from powerful leadership to ineffectual leadership. Join me for live call-in sessions, one-on-one interviews, and thought leadership segments as high-profile leaders and I explore what it takes for you to avoid the blight of dreaded irrelevancy and outline how you can achieve and maintain your place among the world's most profound and relevant leaders. Thank you again for listening. Let's get to today's episode. Welcome. I'm thrilled and honored to have as my special guest today, Clay Ritchey. I have known Clay for many years, and he genuinely embodies the true meaning of relevant leadership. Clay Ritchey is Chief Executive Officer of Verato. Clay is a seasoned executive with more than 20 years of experience driving growth and innovation in market-leading healthcare technology organizations. As CEO, Clay is passionate about working with healthcare organizations across the care continuum to solve the problem that drives everything else, knowing who is who. As a leader, Clay has a passion for creating organizations that are customer-obsessed, trustworthy, and strive to make a difference every day. Prior to joining Verato, Clay served as CEO of Avariant and Equinox Healthcare. He also served as Chief Marketing Officer at Imprivata and Hillrom IT Solutions. Thank you, Clay, for being with us today, and let's get started. As a leader, what does relevance mean to you?
Hi, Christine. Thanks for having me join. Relevance as a leader. I think that in today's world, being a relevant leader is one that doesn't stay in an ivory tower, but is one who's really aware of what's going on with respect to their customers, what's going on with respect to their employees, and how do you create an environment and a culture where you're not only solving the most important problems that your customers have, but you're also creating an environment that's really practical and has empathy for what your employees are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, so that you can help them be successful, help them connect to the broader vision and goals of the organization. And at the end of the day, really just be laser focused on solving our customers' problems and needs that matter to them so that we can have a vibrant business.
Fantastic. I love the thought of coming out of the ivory tower and having empathy with employees. You know, we've seen time and time again how important that is in the leadership role, where we understand that employees are people and those people have lives, and those lives are not always smooth. And if we can be empathetic as to what's going on with our employees, it better engages them and allows a place for them to really serve customers. What are some of the practices that you engage in to remain relevant as a leader?
So first of all, I'm going to steal an idea from Herb Kelleher, who was the previous CEO of Southwest Airlines. And if any of us have flown Southwest Airlines, you know that's a unique experience, and they're really very, very focused on customer session and creating a unique experience for customers. And what Herb always said was, if you take care of your employees, the employees will take care of your customers, and the customers will take care of your shareholders. So I think one of the hardest things about being a relevant leader is really kind of embracing that idea that we created a culture where our employees feel looked after, heard, understood, and challenged, that they're going to then take care of your customers, and your customers will take care of your shareholders. And at the end of the day, that's what my job is. My job is to is to create a outsized market return for my shareholders. So as I think of through that lens, there's a few things that I've learned along the way that I like to think about as far as a relevant leader goes. And one is, you know, I heard Tom Landry speak once about this idea of the power of positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement. And we see this as parents all the time. In fact, sometimes I think one of the best lessons of being a relevant leader is being a relevant parent. In fact, probably even easier than being a relevant parent. But like what Tom Landry always said is that where other coaches in the NFL are going to give a review, a recording of every play that the player was in and all the things they did wrong. I want you to work on this. I want you to do this better. He says just the opposite, that I'm going to give a highlight reel to all of my players. So I'm going to focus on what you did well, because I know if I focus on what you do well, you're going to do that well again. And then we're going to coach, mentor, and practice on those things that we need to work on. And I think that being able to do that in the work environment is something that I've actually grown quite a bit over the years. I think that negative reinforcement is always the easiest path towards giving feedback. And we're trying to build organizations where we focus on the positive, what we're doing well, how to do more of that. And then we're going to coach, mentor, and we're going to practice, all the things that we're not doing well so that we can continue to evolve and prosper as an organization. So that's one. Another thing is that, in this world, I think coming out of COVID and as we've lived in, through the COVID experience, I've decided that our strategy around return to work is going to be what we're calling a remote friendly workforce, where it's part of that idea of having empathy for where your employees are, what they're dealing with, and what their challenges are in their life, and how that fits in the overall context of our world. So we're really investing in technologies and also things like travel and face-to-face meetings where it's appropriate. But how do we create an environment where you can be a remote employee, but still have the collaboration and the engagement that as close as you can, as if you were close to a headquarters or a physical office? We're investing in technologies that allow for hybrid meetings to take place. Why would you want to drive into an office and want to be on Zooms all day with people at your desk that are at their home desk? Let's create a hybrid technology that's going to allow us to have a good experience for everybody, if you're in the conference room or if you're on a Zoom at home. And so we're investing in video technology and cameras and things of that nature, as well as whiteboards and collaboration tools that we all can have the same kind of whiteboard, virtual or digital whiteboard that allows us to collaborate on. So those are just a couple of things that we're doing here as we think about relevance in today's world.
And I heard you say some of the important characteristics in being a relevant leader, obviously empathy, and then the positive reinforcement. And I appreciate the acknowledgement that sometimes the negative reinforcement is actually easier. I don't know why, as humans, we tend to go negative before we go positive, but to really build that muscle where we are enforcing the behaviors we'd like to see reenacted again, I think is extremely important. So what have been some of your own internal personal struggles as you've evolved as a relevant leader? So if this Clay were speaking to the early new leader Clay, what would be some of the struggles that you would identify that were either unnecessary or words of wisdom that you could offer that Clay as he transitioned through his career?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think first of all, when I was younger, I always wore my emotions more on my sleeve. And I felt like somehow that emphasis through my emotions was going to allow my positive energy and ideas to be better understood and heard and to instill following. And what I've learned, what I would say to myself, my younger self is, emotion is always, it can be very positive, but it has to be very purposeful and thoughtful, because people would look for their leader for steadiness, and it's difficult to hear and understand when there's all this emotion coming through. And so that's one area, which is one thought, which is really take a moment, pause, and collect your ideas and thinking, and really use emotions in a very purposeful, thoughtful way. And the second, I would say, is focus. As a younger Clay, I think I would find 10 things that I knew we needed to do well in order to be successful. and you find yourself asking the organization to do all 10 things, and, find a way to do it, go under, around, or through. And I think, what I've now learned over the years is that sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. And I had a mentor who told me that once. It's really stuck with me. And, having perfect focus, what are there's not 10 things, but what are the 3 things that we're going to do first and do well in the right order and sequence? And then with that success, go and then focus on the next 3 things that you want to go do that's going to be critically important. And what you find is that when you get on that flywheel of success, that the tempo and the speed and the pace of that success, doing those fewer projects to perfection and then picking up the next ones, the pace is much faster than if you try to do all 10 at once. And, that's something that is somewhat sometimes counterintuitive, but I think has really, really been a key learning for me. And then I think the third thing I would say is truly understanding and thinking about diversity and how you embrace diverse ideas and people and backgrounds. Frances Fry, she's an HBS professor. I heard her speak about 5 years ago, and it was life-changing for me in many ways with respect to this topic. And she basically said that she created a very simple paradigm. She said, think about if there's 3 people in your team, you and 2 other people, and you hire people that are just like you, then think about 3 circles. And each circle represents the potential of you and your ideas. Well, if you hire 2 other people that are just like you, those 3 circles are they overlap one another. And there is no more or no less. Like, you are not expanding your potential collectively because because you think alike, you are alike. And then imagine truly hiring for diversity. And now you've got 3 diverse circles. And now imagine a Venn diagram, a typical Venn diagram where they have 3 circles and they intersect in the middle. And she said something that really made sense to me. She said, if you hire for diversity, but you don't truly embrace it, then you're going to only be the potential for that. Your team is going to be the intersection of all those circles, which is a much smaller part of the potential, even individually. But if you truly embrace diversity and think differently about how you diverge and are open to new ideas, then you got the benefit of the surface area of all 3 of those circles in that Venn diagram. So, and then she gave us a challenge. She said, look, think about the next meeting you're in and ask yourself, how does that meeting, you're making a decision, how do you as a team make that decision? And she said, most teams start with making that decision with somebody comes in with a recommendation, and the whole team spends 50 minutes of a 60-minute meeting talking about why they agree with that recommendation. And there's all these other viewpoints in the room that never get heard. And by the time you're on the 30th minute, those viewpoints have already decided, no, thank you. I'm just what's the point? And she said, maybe do something different. Maybe start your meeting with, here's the hypothesis, here's the recommendation. Where do we diverge from that? Where do we have a different set of opinions in the room? What's wrong with that? What are we capturing? What is the trade-off? What is the sub-optimization that idea might be bringing? So having the courage and the openness to really diverge before you converge, and to be able to have an organization that's patient enough to do that divergence, because sometimes you have to go slow to go fast, and there are no shortcuts. So those are the 3 things I think, if I could tell my younger self, just don't say you recommend diversity, but embrace it and truly act and think differently. And so doing, the potential for your organization opens up significantly.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I can't talk about leadership without mentioning the Great Resignation. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think that has caused the Great Resignation and perhaps what's still going on in the workplace today.
I'm going to use a metaphor that I see happening in my own profession that's causing a market for Verato, which is this idea of healthcare. I'm a Gen Xer, right? So, and if you look at the Gen Xers and older, 95% of us have primary care physicians. We have a doctor who navigates our care, and we rely on that physician. They have a relationship with us. They know us over the years, and we trust that physician to navigate our care through the care journeys that we need over time. But then if you start looking at the millennial generation and younger, only half to less than half of those people have a primary care physician. They actually have grown up in the world of the internet, and they want immediate gratification on on healthcare, and they want to consume it the same way they consume something they would buy on Amazon or their favorite retailer online. So this idea of today's modern worker wanting a little bit more real time, more responsiveness, an environment and a culture that they're working in that more suits their current lifestyle and their current way that they're consuming life and living life. I think that's part of this. I think, the other part of this is that there's some, these generations have not lived through a recession. They don't know what it's like to be asked to be one of hundreds or thousands of people who lose their job on the same day and are carrying out the proverbial brown box with a few things from your desk to go home. They're, in many ways, they haven't lived through that type of uncertainty. And in this world where there's, more, there's more demand, the supply demand curve is really out of whack. There's more demand for workers than there is supply. I think that you're seeing this great resignation be, well, look, the grass is, it's hard. Life is hard. Work is hard. I just hit a road bump. They don't value me. They're not creating a culture that I really like. And well, I've got these calls. My phone is lighting up all the time. Well, okay, I'll go ahead and answer the call. Oh, really? That sounds interesting. That's exciting. Oh, you can give me a 25% raise to come and I can still work from home. And all these things sound wonderful. So like it becomes so easy to think about that next move, and I think that, I think so I think is what's the answer to these questions? Like, how do you create a company where people are, don't want to answer that phone? That's what I talk to my team all the time. Like, we'll never win the arms race. If the arms race is dollars and compensation, like you can't win that arms race. There's always going to be another employer out there willing to pay more. And to be candid, I think if I could tell any of these employees as a mentor to them is don't fall too much in love with chasing money, because recessions happen. And, the first thing I tell anybody, if you have a job and you haven't been there for at least 3 years, you haven't had a job. You didn't have any meaningful experiences that I, as a leader, would find valuable, because only if you've lived through the business cycles and the decisions that you've made and understand and learn from those, we know what a best practice is versus something to learn from, that you shouldn't do. So, I feel like, how do we get these people then to be more patient and to want to be a part of something? And I think there's several things you can do there. One is, I do think that this idea of a double bottom line is critically important in today's world. This idea of how can you be a part of something, building something that not only are you going to create financial freedom and prosperity for your workers, but they're also working on something that they can relate to, that they can connect with, that is bigger than themselves. So this idea of double bottom line, that's why I love healthcare so much and so passionate around it. Like, doing something that I truly believe, if we could help healthcare understand who's who in this digital world we live in, that we could truly transform and help really unlock a lot of potential of the digital health that we've been making all these investments in. But being able to articulate to my team, my employees, I feel like they're now saying, you know what, I believe in that. I can make a difference. So that's one. Two, you have to create a culture that people want to be a part of. And, when I think about culture, we think about three things at Verato. The first thing is being customer obsessed. Herb Kelleher, I talked about earlier. How do we make sure that we're maniacal about solving customers' problems and needs and always doing what's right? And, any expectation we set, we're going to exceed it. The second is, striving to make a difference every day in our culture. I can focus on my emails. And I guess maybe some immediate gratification, but I really make a difference. And I move the needle. That I get the healthcare industry closer to this holy grail of knowing who's who at every interaction. Or not even what was easy today. I just kind of, so how do we make a difference? Just try to make a difference every day and acknowledge that and have a path to making a difference so that people could truly see where they fit into the world, and that they know that they're moving the needle, that they did something that had impact, and they can see how what they worked on today is part of a bigger thing that's going to really solve a bigger problem. And the last thing is an organization and culture built on trust. I think that trust is probably the thing we don't talk about nearly enough, but it's the most important element of any culture, of any high-performing organization. In the same way that healthcare and digital health can't even begin without understanding the basic fundamental idea of who is who from an identity perspective, you can't build an organization to really fight this whole great resignation without an underlying understanding and concept of trust. And what does trust mean for us at Verato and for me as a leader? The first thing is, you mentioned it earlier, investing in people. It's it's one thing to say we want you to be trustworthy. It's another thing to understand, well, what does it mean to be trustworthy? Well, to be trustworthy, it means that you're an expert, that you're a trusted advisor, that you've got a special skill that you worked on that people look to and gravitate to and say, hey, I want to ask you a question, Clay, because you're an expert on this and you have done the work. Can you help me understand this? Can you help me be better at this? So can you be a trusted advisor for your internal peers as well as your customers? The second thing about being having a trustworthy culture is no bullshit, like no BS. And what I mean by that is no politics. And I know that we're people, so by definition, there's politics in our nature, but no hidden agendas, no no need or desire to withhold information or to go around somebody, but like true transparency with a clear passion to let the best idea win, and to have transparency and openness around where we stand on issues, and we owe that to one another. And we talk a lot about courage of conviction in our organization when we talk about trust. And we talk about this idea, we have to create a safe environment for risk taking so that that's all about trust, risk taking, a safe environment, so that people can have the courage of their conviction to fight for their ideas, to articulate their ideas, to get out there on a limb and talk about a solution that we haven't talked about or isn't maybe popular, but is one that they believe is the right solution. Those are all the things that I think you need to do. And I think if you do those things well, if you have trust, your organization from the top to the bottom knows how they're making a difference every day, and they can all align around this idea of being customer obsessed and making a difference with our customers. I think now you're building this culture that, the Great Resignation can pause and say, hey, this is special. I want to stay. I want to be a part of this. And you know what? I'm not going to answer my phone. I could, but I don't need to because I'm happy with where I am. And the last thing I'd say there is, you can't win the arms race, but it's critical that you have an open, transparent discussion with your employees about their compensation so that they know that that they know how they're paid, right? So, so we're spending a lot of energy leveling all of our roles and being very transparent and open with what we think the market is for those roles, given your responsibilities and your job, so that, we don't promise we're going to always be in the 75th percentile, but if they can see a pathway to get there as they grow and develop and become more trustworthy and more expert at what they do, then we have this kind of more, a partnership that feels more like a partnership. So, so you can't ignore the arms race, but you're not going to win there, right? We don't want that. And gosh, I hope we can help today's workforce in America see that the arms race isn't the answer. The answer is finding a place for meaning, where you can find meaning, purpose, and the power of collaborating and working with people who have similar like-mindedness around these types of cultural values I mentioned.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, what final thoughts or practice would you leave our audience with today? Something that they could go out and really work on developing right now, a leadership characteristic that is important for them on their journey to being or remaining relevant leaders?
I think where I'll start with, or my one piece of kind of additional advice or kind of thinking that I haven't shared already is, I don't know about you, Christine, but I've been in part of a lot of organizations where the organization is run by departments. So I'm part of marketing, I'm part of sales, I'm part of engineering, I'm part of customer success or customer services or whatever the term might be, or finance. And we have this kind of idea of, well, we want to take our important priorities and our important goals and our KPIs, and we want to go out and we want to have them cascaded down into the organization so that everybody understands what success looks like and they know they're making a difference. They know they're working on the right things that are moving the needle. But so many organizations I've been a part of are trying to achieve that. On one hand, they say everything I just said, but then they go and they create departmental goals, live within a silo of that department. And that's where I think that if I can give any practical advice would be, just set aside the departments for a second and think about the fact that we're part of an organization, a company that's working together like a perfect symphony. And in order to do that, you have to have this idea of a cross-functional team. And those goals that you're cascading down, they have to be owned cross-functionally, because at the end of the day, if you want customers for life, if you want to have high retention, net and gross, well, that's not just a services organization's problem, is it? You have to have the right products. You have the right sales team who's setting the right expectations. You have to have the right marketing team who's helping articulate the value, and do the evangelism and to make sure people understand why that we can help them solve their problems. Like the list goes on. Like none of those, but yet so many organizations say, okay, I'm going to give my gross retention and net retention goal to my services team, and I want you to go and solve that problem. And they're looking around and say, where's my help? Because, I can't do this by myself.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things that I've really been working hard on is this idea of how do you cascade goals? We do it through a strategic planning process that begins with what are our goals and objectives of an organization? What are those things you have to get right? How are you going to measure those things? And then from there, what are the critical few initiatives that we believe that if we execute these initiatives well, we're going to achieve our goals that we set as an organization. And those critical few initiatives that become, a handful of cross-functional teams with their own set of KPIs and their own set of work products, and they're holding each other accountable cross-functionally. And, at Verato, we have 3 of them right now. Well, actually, one of them is, customers for life. Like, how do we create customers for life? We've got cross-functional involvement from across the organization, helping think through and make sure we execute all the things properly and perfectly to do so. We have another team focused on disruptive innovation. How do we continue to not stay where we are, but continue to understand our customers' needs and problems, and continue to build new products that's going to be disruptive in the sense of being able to deliver and solve those problems uniquely. And, again, a cross-functional team with a specific set of KPIs and work product. And then the third team is growth, and how do we grow? And again, that's not owned by our sales leader. That's not owned by our marketing leader. That's owned by all of us, a cross-functional team working on how do we make sure that we're going to continue our growth trajectory that we're on. And I think by thinking about taking your cascading goals idea and focusing it on those cross-functional teams that are aligned to these key initiatives, whatever those are, right, the right ones for your organization, I found that really becomes a very, very special vehicle for accelerating your performance as an organization, and also building that trust, because now that trust is being earned in a cross-functional way, not just within your team. So if you think about it, we want our team members, we want them to think about themselves, first of all, as part of Verato, second of all, as part of one of these cross-functional teams. And then maybe after that, okay, I'm one part of the finance team because there's a set of skills I need there when I'm part of the engineering team, and so kind of inverting that triangle, if you will, so that we get people thinking the right way, acting the right way, collaborating the right way. Those are the things I've been working on in the last kind of few years here as a CEO, because there's nothing more beautiful than getting your whole organization working together. When you do those things, by the way, we have an annual meeting. We bring every employee in from around the world for us. And, the agenda of this meeting is basically broken out by those 3 initiatives we just talked about. And, we've got maybe 20 presenters sometimes may participate in an hour and a half presentation. And those are the leaders of the organization. These are the people doing the work. Mm-hmm. These are the people who decided what we're going to do. And they're sitting here just beaming with confidence and with delightment around being able to share what they've done and what they've been able to achieve together, and what their leadership, what their insights, what their hard work achieved. And, it's infectious, it's contagious. That's where the trust becomes. That's where this idea of trusted advisor starts building with this cross-functional work, and then the ability to share that with the organization. And now those people all know that what they're working on is moving the needle, making a difference every day for themselves, for the company, for our customers. So I know that's one humble idea that I have that maybe others can learn from, that may be a good way to close out today's conversation.
Thank you. The number one reoccurring complaint that I hear from employees at almost every level of an organization is lack of communication. that model that you just described would certainly create a basis for bridging those communication gaps. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. Don't be surprised if you have an onslaught of qualified candidates knocking at your door who want to work for your organization. And I really appreciate your time, and it's been delightful. And I know our audience will be greatly impacted through the words that you've shared with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you for joining me, Christine Rozier, and the Irrelevant Leader podcast series. Remember this: you are more extraordinary and capable than you think. To become the leader you aspire to be, you need the right tools and support to assist you in developing and maintaining the characteristics found in great and relevant leaders. That's why I host the Irrelevant Leader podcast, direct the year-long leadership collaborative, and Rozier Leadership Retreats. Visit the website at christinerozier.com, that's spelled ROSIER, to learn more. Check out the podcast page for upcoming live events and interviews with amazing, relevant leaders. If you're not already on the mailing list, then please sign up to join me in this powerful network of exceptional leaders.